our fourth speaker, has been with Fonterra since 2001, working in a range of areas: policy, government relations, sustainability. She's currently General Manager for Policy and Advocacy for Fonterra, looking at development of national and local policies that will help to sustain and maintain a successful and environmentally responsible dairy industry. From Fonterra, would you please welcome Carolyn Mortland.
Well, thank you, Jim, and I will join you in trying to lift spirits here today. I am the chairing squad for the dairy industry. I hope I'm not in front of a firing squad. I am very pleased to be able to speak here today. I am a commercial lawyer by trade. Quite a simple thing, really. You have two people who have a shared vision. Somebody wants to build something, someone wants to pay for it, and they get on and do it. If they come into any tension or problems, you send it down to the litigation department and move on to the next contract. Resource management is a whole other bucket of milk, something that I really enjoy because it is about the community that we live in. It's about you and me and how we choose to live as a society. It's not everyone has the same view. There are inherent tensions. We are dealing with finite and dynamic resources and competing interests and needs. I am also a proud and passionate Kiwi and a mum. I'm proud of our country. We punch above our weight in so many ways, whether or not we can outsail on the 9th race, and I identify strongly with our beautiful country. I worry about whether my children will be lured away from New Zealand with greater opportunities offshore. So I have a lot of things going on, as we all do, about what I want for my community and my society going forward. Good for us is good for the economy. I'm going to revert to type and I'm going to talk a little bit about what dairy does bring to New Zealand. We represent 22% of New Zealand's exports and 7% of GDP. So what does that mean in real terms? Well, our announcement of a record forecast farmgate milk price this week of $8.30 per kilogram of milk solids will bring an extra $5 billion in revenue to New Zealand compared with last season, or another 2.5% of GDP. Dairy directly accounts for around 35,000 jobs in New Zealand, but more than that, we are a major contributor to the economies of Northland, Waikato, Taranaki, Manawatu, Wairarapa, Canterbury, Otago, Southland. For every dollar a farmer receives in payout, they spend 50 cents back in the community. That is spending in local towns, on rural supplies, tractors, utes, using the services of vets, consultants, accountants, lawyers, putting their children through the schools, contributing to the local Lions Club. They are the backbone of a lot of those smaller towns and rural communities, and the conduit for what is recognised as one of New Zealand's competitive advantage in the world, which is using our natural bounty and resource to take to the world and bring back in tourism. Last year we invested $587 million in expanding our plants in the Waikato and Canterbury, including commissioning the largest dryer in the world at Darfield in Canterbury. This is a picture of that site. It produces about 5,000 shipping containers of whole milk powder a year, and the second dryer being built will add another 45 shipping containers a day. We've got 27 processing plants across New Zealand, employing about 8,000 people. We have the largest truck fleet in New Zealand, with 450 tankers that collect milk from our over 10,000 shareholder farmers. We sell our products to 140 countries around the world, from base commodities like whole milk powder, skim milk powder, butter, right up to highly specialised products such as pharmaceutical lactose for use in medical inhalers. Our strategy is to move more volume into value and grow market share for our value-added products. We've got $1 billion food service business which supplies hotels, bakeries, airline catering kitchens and quick service restaurants such as McDonald's and Yum. And we've got a strong consumer business predominantly across Asia and Middle East with brands such as Anchor, Anlene, Mainland, and a couple of others. So we know that all of this does come from New Zealand's natural bounty and the Kiwi can do attitude. Our dairy industry depends on and impacts our natural resources and the ecosystem services that it provides. We have a herd of about 4.7 million cows in New Zealand, and we have seen strong growth in dairy over the past 20 years in New Zealand, both from productivity gains from where we were 20 years ago and dairy conversions, particularly in the South Island. The market dynamics tell you that there will continue to be an incentive to move to dairy. We've got very strong global demand that is forecast to remain growing. We know that China's now taken over as our major market. Asia's very big, Middle East, and prices are forecast to continue to be strong. It returns a greater return than most alternative land uses in New Zealand. And we have an integrated and organised industry that makes sure that those returns go back to farmers. So we've got some strong market fundamentals for dairy. This just reflects, so we have the rate of growth, as you can see, has been quite steep. We forecast it as continuing but slowing. It has been slowing actually over the last 20 years. So in the 90s, we were growing at 5.9%. Last decade, that was at 3.3%, and aggregating industry forecast for the future around 2 to 3%. Why is it slowing? Well, the availability of readily accessible land and water is decreasing. So we went to the most obvious places first. The best places for growing dairy, Waikato, Taranaki, Lower South Island, and now we've moved more into places that weren't traditionally or ideally or easily suited to dairy that require more land or assistance for the soils. So partly we live within environmental constraints already. Partly we are now, at the topic of this conversation, seeing regulatory environmental constraints. And Gerard showed you a useful diagram of New Zealand as where that is. With the National Policy for Fresh Water, it will go across the country. We've seen nutrient discharge limits and horizons. Canterbury's regional plan holding position for 5 years. It puts dairy conversions as non-complying activities. Nitrogen discharge allowances in Taupo, restrictions on water use in the Waikato, and the list will grow. The fact of the matter is, dairying is a leaky system. So, by the way, are dairy systems that are housed overseas. And when we compare, we should remember that they're leaky. It's just that the leak happens where their feed is growing, where the corn and maize is growing. You have the same problems of application of nitrogen fertiliser and runoff. Just take a look at the picture of the Gulf of Mexico in the States where the runoff from the Mississippi turns the Gulf of Mexico brown. That's the corn belt, and that feed, apart from for subsidised fuel, goes to cows. So it's a leaky system. And we've talked about, the panel's talked about, nutrient loss, fecal microbes and sediment loss. We do know how to manage most of these things. Fencing of streams, putting in bridges and culverts, managing the captured effluent which is about 10% of what comes out of a cow when they're going through the farm dairy for milking, and spreading that back on the land. Moving stock off during winter when it's wet and boggy, altering the number of cows you have per hectare, keeping cows off pasture, and hybrid systems with some sort of cow shelters. There are a range of fixes, but each mitigation has varying degrees of impact on farm capital costs, productivity and profitability, and varying degrees of success for the environmental outcomes we're seeking to achieve. So are we at a crossroad? What does this mean for those of us who want to see New Zealand's dairy industry success story continue? What does the continuation of dairy mean for those of us who want to see an improvement in waterways impacted by pastoral land use? Well, I think it's good news. I think we can find a sensible way through this challenge. It's not easy. We have a lot of challenges in front of us, which I think Mike has put to us well. But we need to look for solutions, not scalps. We're all in this together because we all benefit from a healthy environment, a healthy economy, and the social outcomes that we need. It is about the use, development and protection of natural and physical resources in a way which enables people and communities to provide for their social, economic and cultural well-being while safeguarding the environment. I picked up those words somewhere, but I wanted to point out the little middle bit that gets missed out, where it's about enabling people and communities to provide for their social, economic and cultural well-being while safeguarding the environment. So here's how I think we do it. I'm going to throw out a few answers instead of just questions and concerns. I'll get it wrong, I'm sure. But yes, set limits. I mean, limits give us all certainty if done properly. We're on board. Limits on water bodies for both their extractive and assimilative capacities are going to give certainty to the community and certainty to farmers to be sure that their resources that they use will not run out in 5 or 10 years, and that will continue to meet the needs of both farmers and the community. It makes sense. It's mind-boggling to me that we haven't done it to date. But limits need to be set taking into account economic, social, cultural and environmental implications, and this is key. An environmental limit set without reference to community needs is unimplementable. An economic goal set without environmental limits is unsustainable. So if we can make a robust assessment with all the facts, or as many facts as we have at hand, I think we will make the right decisions. Choosing your limit really matters. Here's an example of 2 different levels of limits. So the one where you see purple everywhere is if we did this for the country, lock, stock and barrel, which we won't because we will do it across catchments, but if you set N at a moderate threshold for river algae growth, you see over-allocation in all the purple spots. If you set it at a permissive threshold for river algal growth, most of New Zealand is fine. So we make choices in the limits that we set. I'm not advocating for either picture here today. Communities will decide that. The national community needs to decide some of it. And I really welcome the government's National Objectives Framework to put some framework and some facts gathered together by 64 of New Zealand's leading scientists in a room debating this together to start to give some guidance on your limit. Understanding the impact really matters. What this graph shows here is a farm that, with the dotted line, is currently losing 46 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare. Now, there's a range of things that they can do to reduce that nitrogen loss around stocking rates, fertiliser application, how they graze and manage their pasture, whether they use some form of off-pasture, concrete or herd shelter for some of the time. When you can see that those blue diamonds, they are still maintaining relatively their profitability. When you push it down, in this case, to try and get the farmer down to 20 kilograms of nitrogen, they go in the red. No more capital. No more capital purchases and no more debt repayment. So, meeting community needs really matters. Getting better data and reporting is key to this, and I actually want to give a hand to Ministry for the Environment and Ministry of Primary Industries, who have copped a little bit of flack today, but they are getting behind this and putting some money and some effort into getting good economic analysis of what will these policies do, good scientific analysis, and we need more of it, and we need it fast. And I commend Dairy NZ also putting money and resource into this to get some facts on the table. We need catchment-wide solutions, and by that, yes, you can say, okay, it's dairy intensification, that's the problem. Let's just get them and sorted. Well, you will drive perverse outcomes if you do that. You will get farmers who will winter their cows off up the catchment on the sheep and beef farm, and you'll have the same impact coming down the river from those cows, just at a different spot. There are solutions, if you want to find solutions, that might look at, hey, water storage, flushing, opening the lake, as well as improvements on farm. So you have to look at the problem as a whole if you are looking for solutions. Keep it simple, can we? Wow. A population of 4.5 million people, and I'm blown away by the planning plethora that we have. So let's get some nationally consistent frameworks, rule frameworks. Let's try not to reinvent that wheel, and then let local communities have their discussion around values and solutions. Good management practice on farm. There is a lot that we can do on farm. This is what I'll read out here, a quote from Ag Research, NIWA and Land Care scientists who are participating in the National Objectives Framework. Technologies are currently available for a variety of circumstances, from the paddock to catchment scale, and future technologies are in development. We know what we need to do. Effectively adopted technologies should be sufficient in most places to meet desired standards and or create headroom. Land use change and or restoratory approaches will be required in some vulnerable and already significantly impacted catchments, and costs are likely to be significant. So I think that's a really good guide to go from. There are good management practice in areas will achieve results, and that is what a farmer should be doing, and they should carry the cost, because that is about maximising their resource use efficiency and minimising their impact. That is about them being responsible stewards for the natural resources they use. When you go beyond that, we had a little discussion today with one of the questions about private property rights and the common good versus the individual. We need to look at it, because it isn't just a case of, well, they did it, they pay. 50 cents of every dollar they earn goes back into the community. Decisions you make that impact industry impact the society that industry supports. It does require leadership on farm, and my colleague Charlotte will be talking this afternoon about a lot of the work that we do with our farmers, leading change, having one-on-one support to bring them along. One particular thing that we are getting behind on the intensification problem is developed protocols for using the overseer model to model
19 minutes.
the impacts of nitrogen loss. Farmers have not had this information before. And for the first time this season, we will be giving it to them. We will be telling them this is what you lose in nitrogen per kilograms of hectare, and this is what a farmer of your peers in the same geography loses. That's powerful information that they've never had before, and you watch what they can do with it. And then, you know, we get to that very awkward position of the clawback situation when actually good management practice isn't going to be enough. Actually, it is in that sensitive catchment where we are over-allocated now, and it's tricky. No matter how much good management practice you do on farm, with mitigation, you're not going to meet the target that the community wants. Then it does come a question of what are all the solutions? What is the low-cost, highest impact solution for that region, that catchment, that community to achieve the outcomes that they all want? Who pays for that? And what a wonderful thing time can be. Do we need to do this? Do we need the results in 5 years, or do we recognise that it took a long time for this to get to that state, and we can do things over time? Because nobody wins from putting people out of business in the meantime. So I am positive that we have the chance of setting some robust, community-led, well-informed environmental limits to water bodies that will define the outer boundaries of our playing field. I'm in an industry that has made a lot of change, a lot of change in the past, adapted to changing circumstances when we lost our market to England, when we get blocked out of selling to the dairy-rich countries in the EU and the US. We do adapt to circumstances time and time again, but it's about constructive collaboration and looking at how do we have a win-win, how do we grow our economy and have prosperous farmers at the same time as healthy, resilient ecosystems. I don't want to go back to the 1980s. I want to go into the future smarter and better than we are today.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you very much indeed.